So we got a serious case of Carnival deja vu going on here. COVID is back. Well, technically it never left, but you know what I mean. We recently had an outbreak on a cruise ship, a Princess cruise ship in fact, last week, and now we have a situation with Carnival as they have now re-implemented COVID protocols on two of their ships in a certain region of the world. By the way, before we get into this, I do want to apologize in advance. Lately, when I've been doing my videos, I try to find some place around the ship that looks aesthetically pleasing so I can give you guys a nice backdrop and just different backgrounds while I give you all of my news and content. However, it gets harder and harder every day. I swear there's more people coming on this ship every day. I don't know if they're flying on a helicopter or what. So for today, you're just going to have to deal with my balcony. So in breaking news, effective immediately, Carnival Cruise Lines has now implemented COVID protocols in Australia and New Zealand on all of their ships operating over in that area. This includes two ships, the Carnival Luminosa, which is the Costa ship that was recently transformed to a Carnival ship, which began operations just last week on November 6th. And then we have the Carnival Splendor, which has been operating over in Australia since October. Now, these protocols, we all know the spiel. You have to wear a mask in all indoor areas and at events. And of course, you have the COVID testing. If you're getting an antigen test, you have to take it within 24 hours before your departure or embarkation day on your cruise ship. And if you have a PCR test, you can take that within 48 hours prior to your embarkation day on board your cruise. Now, this unfortunate re-implementation of COVID rules, policies, and regulations is coming off the heels of an incident that took place just last week on board the Majestic Princess. And keep in mind that Princess is part of the largest cruising company on planet Earth, the Carnival Corporation, which does include companies like, of course, Carnival Cruise Line, P&O Australia, Holland America, you name it. They got 9 brands. But basically, we had 800 passengers on board the Majestic Princess. I believe they had a 12-day sailing. Unfortunately, 800 people caught COVID, and they disembarked the ship. Now, this caused a lot of controversy because this is somewhat of a deja vu situation, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, because last year we had a situation with the Ruby Princess, or was it 2 years ago? All this stuff seems kind of flustered. Anyway, during the pandemic, we had the Ruby Princess over in Australia at the time that also had hundreds of cases in which a lot of people were let off. They were saying it was linked to over 10 deaths, and well, it caused a lot of problems, and it did not look good for the industry. We also had a situation earlier this year with the COVID Princess, where they say as many as 100 people tested positive for COVID on board the COVID Princess while it was over in COVID Princess, on board the Coral Princess while it was over in Australia. Now, do keep in mind, once again, these new sets of rules that are being re-implemented for Carnival Cruise Line are only for ships operating in Australia and New Zealand. Like I said, it includes the two ships, the Splendor and the Luminosa. But the question is, of course, going to be, could this potentially spread over to other Carnival ships? Keep in mind that I am currently on the brand new Carnival Celebration, and looking around, I have to be honest with all of you, I have seen somewhat of an uptick in people wearing masks, and well, there has been some coughs going around. However, I would not personally link that to COVID. Just keep in mind, we came from the UK. It was cold and wet and rainy when we were there. And then for the first couple ports of call, it was cold. And the next thing we know, it seemed like overnight we got into more so of a tropical climate as we headed over to Portugal and Spain. So naturally, with the changing of weathers, I had a little bit of the sniffles myself. I wouldn't link it to COVID whatsoever. But just to be mindful of everything and the rules that are being implemented, I would say naturally people here are being just a little bit more cautious as we head over to Miami, which we will arrive in 2 days. Now, we do also have Royal Caribbean that is advising all passengers over in those regions, that of course being Australia and New Zealand, to also mask up in indoor areas, also outside where places are crowded and they cannot go anywhere else, in order to have some sort of separation between people, social distance. Now, keep in mind, these rules that are being implemented are subject to change at any time. They can be tightened or they can be released and relaxed at any point in time as well. Also, along with these rules that are being implemented on board Carnival ships as we move forward, when it comes to the passengers and crew on board, 95% of the passengers on board must be vaccinated, as well as 100% of the crew. And when it comes to the 5% that are not vaccinated, they have to have an official medical exemption. Alright, so now that the fun stuff is out of the way, I'm not going to sound like a broken record here. We've all been through the pandemic. We know what policies are being implemented. We know how the whole thing goes. I would just say when it comes to all this, you should not freak out, you should not worry, and just keep in mind too, this isn't a cruise ship incident. There has been an uptick in COVID cases, period, over in those regions, out of which being Australia and New Zealand. They've even implemented mandatory masking over in hospitals over in those areas as well. But do I think this is going to get worse? At this point, maybe not. Just keep in mind that we are heading into the winter season, so you never know, but it's just kind of up in the air. But personally, I do think that this is something that people just should be more aware of, so to speak, and not really alarmed and afraid of. Do what you gotta do. If you're gonna wear a mask, I don't think anybody should be judged for it. If you don't wear one, vice versa, you get the idea, and well, that's all I gotta say on the matter. Anyway, I do think this is interesting that all of this seems to kind of come full circle. All of this started with the Diamond Princess back in 2020, and then when it comes to Australia in particular, we had the Ruby Princess, and now when they just resumed operations over in that area, and it just happened about a month ago, we now have a situation again with Princess Cruises, and I'm not saying Princess is at fault, I want to make that very clear. I just think it's interesting. But either way, guys, what I got for the news. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Of course, just know that I appreciate and love all of you, and well, I'll see you later. Take it easy.